Welcome to the Art of War in the Wild mini-conference. I'm your host, Sayal Her. This mini-conference is composed of a few panel conversations focused on the real-world application of timeless wisdom. The backdrop is that we are in a world experiencing a leadership crisis on a global scale across various dimensions, both personal and professional, private and public, among many other dimensions, resulting in widespread struggle and suffering. Much of what we're experiencing stems from embracing an almost Pollyannish perspective that romanticizes leadership, human nature, and reality, sterilizes our organizations and enterprises, and infantilizes people in leadership roles, among others. When in reality, we should be embracing a more realistic perspective that integrates every aspect of human nature and reality, including the good, the bad, and the ugly. The Art of War, or the Sun Tzu, provides profound timeless insights into leadership, strategy, culture, conflict, execution, and much more, offering approaches for surviving and thriving in today's reality. The objective of these conversations is to engage a few forward thinkers and forward doers who are reshaping the modern world through the wisdom of the art of war, to explore the gap between principles and practice where reality and theory converge, to explore applying ancient wisdom to modern-day scenarios, highlighting the dynamics between intentions and outcomes, and to illuminate insights for engaging in challenging environments. Welcome to the Art of War in the Wild mini-conference.
Well,
Hello.
hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. It's good to have you all here. So here we are as a panel. We're talking about the art of war in the wild, part 2, right? And I want to thank you each for being part of this. And I'm really looking forward to hearing you share your experiences and making this very real, this wisdom in this text, and make it more real. This panel is really in 2 parts, and today is part 1, and then on Thursday is part 2. And the purpose of that is to allow us to have a more extended time to go a little bit more deeply into exploring the implications and the applications of principles and how we live the text principles, the wisdom from it. And it's just really exciting to be here. I hope we have a really good time. I wanted to make this fun, enjoyable, but also really share some wisdom with it. Look, I think the intent here, and let me test this out with you and see if you all agree. It says, really, how do we bring more life to the wisdom of the text? How do we bring more life to the wisdom of the text? And as a way, I'd like to give us some attention to the relevance of this text to you personally. And if you think about it, the relevance to you, you can think about it in terms of your self-management, self-regulation, how you take care of yourself. Second area is your interactions with other people. And then third would be your pursuits, your intents in terms of personal life, work, and professional. So it's wide open here, but I think what we really want to get is some kind of a clear manifestation about how you're living this and also how you're struggling with it, because living by principles is not easy. Principles I think of as ideals, and so you never achieve them, but you're always pursuing them. So we're always at the edge. And the art of war, and certainly in there, looking at some of those concepts and those principles, that's very much there. So that's what we're going to be doing. Does that sound okay to everybody?
That sounds great.
Sounds good.
Terrific. All right. So look, I'm the moderator. I don't know what that means in this conversation, but I hope it's going to be loose, because what I really do, let's have a conversation. Let's make this a conversation, not me asking you questions, but make it a conversation, which means that you can be asking each other questions, right? You might just say, hey, Chris might say to Cynthia, what about this? So let's turn it into a conversation. I'm going to be in the background. I may come up with some questions myself or a couple of comments, but I'd like us to be free form. So if we get some pauses, let's see whether they offer anything to show up in those pauses. And then we'll go from there. Does that work?
Yeah, works perfect.
Terrific. So how about we just take 1 minute, if you could just take a brief introduction to yourself, just a little bit about yourself for about 1 minute, and then we'll dive in. Okay? So Cynthia, you want to kick this off?
Sure. My name is Cynthia Chambers, and I am truly excited to be here. I have a background in technology, and I am currently helping individuals navigate their mindset. And the art of war comes in quite handy, and just giving people tools to help them regulate and change their perspective. So happy to be here.
That's great. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, hi. So I've worked in the product space across mostly large companies for my entire career, but I've recently pivoted to becoming a fractional product consultant, and I'm trying to also lean into the coaching space, but specifically within the product management area, if you will, and product management discipline. Mostly because I really still feel like product management is a pretty immature discipline across most industries. Some industries are very mature, consumer goods, for instance, but most technology industries are not very mature with the product management discipline, in my experience, anyway. So I'm trying to lean in that direction and leverage coaching and my coaching background and coaching experience just in day-to-day engagement with my clients. The art of war is absolutely part of that. I never mention it, and this is my hot take for today, which we can dig into after intros. But the hot take is I don't really ever think about the art of war. But the art of war is very much a part of my thinking. So I'll leave that there and we'll come back to it.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. You've given some good meat there, Chris.
Good.
All right, Steve, how about you, sir?
Okay, thank you. Chris, I don't know how you can drop the mic on that one and not expect anyone to pick it up. I mean, that's just not fair. Steve Fastabend, I guess if I thought about the last 10 or 15 years, it's been a series of engagements for me that were other consultants or other companies got kicked out, situations that were dire for the companies I was working with. It's like we either make this work or close the doors. So that was it was interesting. It was exciting, and it just there's so many things about art of war that just to me transcend technology or business and everything else. So I'm quite excited to start to delve into how I love the topic of how does that affect one personally and professionally, and why that, I mean, in my opinion, really must be seamless. And to echo what Chris said, it's you don't have to think about it; you merely need to live it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Steve. Sai, how about you, sir?
Thank you so much. Pleasure being with all of you and being together, if you will, and likewise the audience for joining us and everything. I'm a coach, consultant, practitioner, if you will. I have over 4 decades of focus on transformation, really helping organizations at every level calibrate their business models and operating models. I've worked with hundreds of organizations, thousands of individuals, and I learn something new every minute, every day. As I like to say, if you will, I'm a student of life, a pracademic in praxis, a student of human nature, human dynamics in the context of the human condition. And as for those that know me well, they've often heard me say the human animal can be the most magnificent and most dangerous animal in its natural habitat. So I look forward to the exploratory conversation. Thank you.
It also depends on which animal you're going to bring, right? Right, Sai?
Indeed, always, always, always.
All right, look.
Well,
All right.
and you know what? Maybe that's part of what a great segue. Maybe that's part of the thing we should be talking about is which animal. And I mean, we all know that we interact with people and see their work persona. We get to know them better, and we have their family or home persona. And that change is, I would go so far as to say pretty inconsistent with healthy behaviors and how you adopt a value set or a set of behaviors consistent with Art of War.
And how would that happen, Steve? Just following up on that.
Well, I mean, my own kind of personal experience is I didn't come by this easily. Like any significant change, there's always death and rebirth, right? There's pain involved, and I was 20 years ago, I was the guy that was one way at work and a different way at home, and I had these little compartments, and I was forced to change. I was forced to consider different things, and Art of War and kind of that practice and taking whole and how you interact. It was not, boom, the lightning struck. It was not something that I did at work. It was not something that I applied to this project, but did differently when I was coaching or leading employees. And it was not something that, well, this is my work thing, and home is different. I can let down that shield or put up that shield. It for me, it is the alignment of there's one Steve, and there's a set of behaviors, and there's taking whole. There's the respect that you have, and it transcends the dynamic that you are working in. You can be you. And once I learned that, things really, 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 really changed. And quite simply, I began almost accidentally. Don't misunderstand. Don't misunderstand that I have this big head, and it was like, oh wow, I get this great idea. Quite accidentally, that revelation, that taking whole, understanding that we change together and how we organize around goals, and that alignment of home Steve and work Steve and leader Steve and worker Steve. It goes away. I found that out, and then I started telling other people, hey, by the way, chief technology officer or director of this, you've got to be the same person everywhere you go. And this is Art of War, right? That's not secret to business success. That's secret to happy life. And I'm talking too much.
No. I wanted to follow up on that, Steve, because I feel like I followed a similar journey. So my question is, well, I have a bunch of questions, but one of my questions is, what did that, in hindsight, or if you reflect back, what did that do to your stress level, your comfort within your own skin, your ability to be present with people and not overthink situations? Like, how is that awareness? Because what I feel like you're describing is just like an awareness on how to live. How has that awareness affected those aspects of your life? And I'm happy to share how it has affected mine.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I was at the doctor not too long ago, and he looked at my blood work and said, wow, you're in great shape. And I said, not bad for a guy my age. And he said, well, not bad for a guy 10 years younger than you. Life-changing, right? Yeah. It's the deliberate, it's not that you don't think or you're not concerned. Correct. My worry turned into thinking about actions, thinking about strategies and implementing something. And it's an elixir. It's a wonderful tonic.
Yeah. I had a similar conversation with my doctor not too long ago. He actually had to look back at my chart and remind himself how old I was. But The interesting thing there for me, Steve, is, man, I don't even know how to put it. It's just like you're just operating differently, right? You're just, and when I find myself overly stressed, first of all, the fact that I'm even aware that I'm stressed about something I might not need to be stressed about, is enlightening in and of itself. But when I find myself overly stressed, personally, work related, my own consulting practice related, work for my clients or work for my business, I find when I can take a step back and think, okay, hold on, I'm not thinking strategically here. It is amazing to me, that is art of war thinking. Number one. Number two, it's amazing to me how quickly I'm able to literally say to myself, what happens if I do nothing? Like, what's actually going to happen if I do nothing? And it's not do nothing, because frankly, even having that conversation with yourself is doing something. It is thinking strategically. And then playing out those scenarios, to your point about taking hold, like that thinking, that mindset, is not just about work. It is not just about my relationship with my wife or my family. It's just a mindset. It's just how you engage in life, really. So anyway, you got me rolling there. But I think you're onto something, which is it is about living.
Cynthia, you were nodding. Share.
Yes.
Well, I'm waiting. I'm just about to prompt you.
Well,
you're on the edge.
As soon as Steve started with I'm one person at work and someone at home, the amount of energy that we use to live in those two dynamics, those dualities, if you will, somebody at home versus somebody at work, and the self-awareness that you had to come to even see that you were two different people, is huge. And so I look at the art of war of a self-awareness that you have of yourself first, right? And then it says how we're to be aware of what's in front of us, the other people, other situations, all the other elements in the environment. Just becoming aware of that, and then being able to take action. And to your point, taking the line and blurring it so that you couldn't see the difference between who you were at home and who you were at work, that they became just who you were, and so forth. So I totally jumped in with the energy part, because there's a lot of leaders that feel they have to be one way in the boardroom and another way with their teams.
And yet both of them have different milieus, right? I mean, they're different systems. And
I would argue they're both artificial, maybe even false.
In what sense?
They're acting like the CEO, and then they're acting like the parent at home, right? Instead of just being their authentic self.
So how do you? Go ahead, Cynthia.
I was just gonna say, and I would say their acting is based on who they think they need to be.
Right.
Who shaped that perspective for them that says this is how you're supposed to be in the boardroom, this is how you're supposed to be with your team, this is how you're supposed to be at home. That perception, if it's not self-analyzed, if you will, just to ask yourself why you like that, where did you get it from? It can lead you down into holding a lot of roles.
Well, and it's egocentric, right? They're thinking about who am I supposed to be, or how am I supposed to act, or how am I supposed to be perceived in this role right now in the boardroom versus at home in the living room, right? And that by its very nature is inauthentic, right?
So how does your authenticity show up when you go from one world called work And within work, there are many different worlds too, right? You can walk into a different department and it's a different world. Or you can go at home, you can go into relationships. They're different. I'm using artificial, but the worlds, there's different energy fields, there's different familiars.
Sure.
And how do you stay integral to yourself?
Well, one thing I want to mention is there's a very wise person who once said to me, and he blew my mind because I didn't agree with him. He once said to me, there is no work-life balance. There's no such thing.
Right.
There isn't. So to your point about like, how do you go from one conversation, I don't know, in my own world, right? How do I go with one conversation with a bunch of, highly educated engineers, right, that are building software components to, a conversation with their CEO about a future project or a future endeavor, literally back to back? Like, how do you shift and then, walk away out of this room and go have lunch with my son, right? Like, how do I do that? I listen. That's how I do it. I listen to, who's participating in that conversation
Chris,
and just react accordingly. That's all.
I think you hinted at this earlier when you said maybe there's times when doing nothing is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you have, right, if Chris is Chris with his children and his work and his client and this, right? If Steve is Steve, then you have an energy and an influence and an authenticity, and people, I'm just convinced that we only cognitively perceive about 10% of what's really going on.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, we just absorb. I mean, children will see a stranger and instantly know whether it's danger or not danger. And I can't explain that, right? But it's a very real thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that the same persona, that same person, if I'm centered on me and I'm at work, my work self shows through. And I don't, the beautiful part about that, when people get it, the beautiful part is your energy is in being you and having your influence, not in putting up a facade that likely, I mean, we've all been there, right? Oh, John walks out of the room and it's like, well, yeah, but that's not the real John. Like, he doesn't mean that. Well, people see it. So being genuine to self in all situations it's the magic dust to me.
Yeah, totally with you on that.
So I'm going to kick this, but how do you get to that place? So just listening to all of you, and Sai, you haven't chimed in yet, which I know you will. But no, I mean that. Yeah, but look, you're all been putting this to practice for a long time. So you say you don't think about the art of war, or you're authentic and you're able to move from one to another and be who yourself. But you went through a process to get there.
Yeah.
Right. And as like Steve, you were mentioning a little bit. So the question is, I'm thinking about somebody who's going, what is this text? What is this all about? How do I make it relevant? And to hear someone say, well, I don't even think about it, that tells me you really have integrated a lot. But what about for the person who's a beginner, somebody who's really curious, or they've been doing some work and they want to expand? How would you address what this could be for other people who are not in the advanced?
I'd love to hear Sai's take on that, quite frankly, but I would be very careful with just jumping into the art of war without any guidance. And without much context, because it could be just totally misunderstood in a lot of ways. And I remember Sai has used this phrase a lot, so I want to give him credit for it. But the art of war could be a sharp object, and when you have a sharp object in your hand and you use it inappropriately, you can do some damage to yourself, to people around you, to your career, to your relationships. So That said, I mean, you could just read it and think about whether or not you want to apply the principles that are there. There's plenty of contextual stuff online to help guide you as well. But honestly, what the answer to your question is, it depends. It depends on what they're trying to get out of engaging with the art of war and the learnings within. Yeah. But I'm sorry, Cynthia, go ahead.
No, are you done?
No, I was, but I wanted to hear Sai's take on it. But you finish first. Yeah.
Just to piggyback on your analogy, it being a sharp object. My first experience with it, when I read the inside cover, and it told me that this was going to be a solution to a dysfunction that I had, which was looking at conflict as all conflict being bad conflict, and that there was no conflict without aggression, and that there was a win-lose out of every conflict, if you will. So my perception going in to that front cover and being able to see that not only was it going to show me that there could be conflict without aggression, but that it was going to show me how. And I'm like, I was quite excited, and I would hope those that are watching, is excited enough to go in it deep in first, and just believe that what the cover says regarding conflict is inevitable. It's part of life. We're going to see it everywhere we go. And so you can get in where you fit in, and try and master it on your own, or you can take tools that are available to you. And I would say the art of war is like a tool. You use the analogy, Chris, a sharp object. I know the word is considered the sword, right? And though we say everybody should read the Bible, and so, but yet it's people's perception of it prior to them going in. So I would say for anyone that is a newbie, never heard of it before or what have you, if you wanted to learn how to navigate conflict, I would say it would be a great read. I would emphasize how to read it, because we were given instructions on it was instructed how to read it. Read Taking Hold first, then the Sage Commander 3 times, and then go back and read the book. And as you read it and over, it just sunk in without you thinking, studying it. It was actually just the concepts of it were familiar, and the awareness that you see for yourself helped you to gain awareness for how others would react with it as well. So I would definitely encourage to read it via the instructions 3 times, Taking Hold, and the Sage Commander, and then reading the whole book. That right there, they should actually put it in the front cover of it, instructions on how to read it.
That's great. Yeah. Very good. Sai, what you want to chime in here a little bit?
Definitely. Before I chime in with too much, Steve, did you have a thought relative to the question, and then I'll add on, if you will.
No, please go ahead.
So if we look at, here's the interesting thing to me. Everything that I'm hearing actually goes back to one key word, and that's naturalness. If we look at us as identities, right, there's many aspects that we have to our identities, right? Exactly, I think, as what you mentioned, right? And Chris, you mentioned, if I'm at work, there's a set of aspects of my identity that emerge. And then if I'm at, with family, right, another different set. What is interesting is we often live an unnatural, I'm using the keyword unnatural, really inauthentic kind of life. And what is intriguing to me is some people recognize it, some people don't recognize it, just our degree of awareness. We may not recognize it. I may not recognize how inauthentic or unnatural my life may be. Natural being with myself. So to take that journey, someone could read the book 100 times. I've met people that have literally read it. There's no impact. And the reason is fundamentally there isn't enough stress or tension that forces them to struggle through the conditioning that we have. So if you think about all of our journeys, we've struggled. You have to struggle to get through to the other side. And sometimes there has to be a catalyst that will stress you in a healthy way versus overstress you or understress you to make that journey. So
it's not so I just, excuse me, I just don't want to lose this, because when you say stress, I also hear it in examples like what you just said, which was you had this whole thing about conflict and how to turn around. So when you say stress, it's a catch-all, but underneath it, there's some curiosity, some urge, some desire for something that creates stress that leads to that. I mean, and I think about there's some purpose, there's something that's calling you to do it, to read it for a reason.
I think if I can put one label word on it, I would call it love, quite honestly. Yeah, and I'm using Sternberg's definition of the word love. There has to be a shared commitment between whoever is going to stress you. There has to be some intent, if you will, that you both parties commit to in order to take that journey together. So that struggle and that stress, if you will, again, in the right hands, like Chris mentioned and others have mentioned, can be an elixir to helping people break through. My recommendation to most folks is you can pick it up, you can read 100 times, but if you don't find someone to truly work with in such a way that's healthy, you're probably not going to see the results. And I know that, I've worked with Steve, with Chris, with Cynthia. I've seen you folks do magic. And part of that is very much in the way that you work with people. So a little bit of perspective. I hope that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to respectfully take issue with your word magic. Is it really magic? And honestly, I mean it a little bit in jest, but like, is it magic or is it just intent, right?
So I can tell you why I use the word magic.
Okay.
I am given my experience with the other side, I am in awe of everything. So for me, everything is so magical. Truly, a blade of grass, as I can't remember the quote. To me, has its own texture, its own color. It actually has a specific smell to it. Most people will never be able to, because they never challenge themselves to smell a blade of grass. So for me, when I smell it, I think about the powers that be that brought that to existence. To me, it's magic. I see what Chris is capable of. I see what Cynthia is capable of, what Steve's capable of. Oh my goodness. You good people underestimate yourselves. Imagine if you had not underestimated yourselves decades ago. Where would you be today? For me, that's magic. So forgive me if I overuse the word.
No. I'm sensitive to the newbies who might be watching this, right? And I understand now what you meant by the word magic, and obviously I've heard you use it many times. But to someone who hasn't experienced this and hasn't gone through a journey like this, magic can be elusive. That's all, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I see all of your faces, and I'm euphoric, which is a scary thought, right? But I'll be quiet now and turn it back to you.
To me, the magic piece, right? Stress and magic, and this discipline of thinking, behaving, interacting with art of war, they all kind of go together. So I didn't accidentally. Few humans, limited to planet Earth, wake up in the morning and say, I'm tired of being an autocratic leader who knows more than anyone in my organization, and I'll just tell them what to do. I'm not that person anymore. I'll do something different, right? Substitute art of war kind of thinking and behavior. It just doesn't happen, right? We change because of stress. We change because we're searching for this better solution. To me, the magic, right, is this thing of timing. It's having the stressor, being in a position, and I look back at my own experience, I was in a position of desperation. And that was actually this wonderful thing, because my desperation said, you have to do something different if you're ever going to get out of this literally alive, right? So the magic was being exposed, having a coach, kind of adopting this different, I'm not sure what to call it. Words fall short. Values, value set, discipline, context, whatever that is, but understanding that taking whole, maximizing everything around me is going to be a far better thing than how I was yesterday, and having the resource and guidance to get there. All that stuff coming together, to me, right? Not sleight of hand, but that is a magical moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people browse the self-help aisles of bookstores or the equivalent online, looking for a book that's going to provide them with some magic. and the millions of books get sold every year that supposedly do that, yet people are generally just as unhappy at the end of the year as they were the year before. So I want to make sure that we're not equating the art of war to something like that.
Yeah.
Because for someone who's maybe browsing down that aisle and happens to see the art of war in that aisle, they might think it's in a similar vein.
So Chris, in what way do you see it? And this, actually, for all of you, in what way do you see this text as very special and distinctly different from all that on the aisle?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is that its focus is on thinking differently and more strategically, as opposed to just making tweaks in your life that might bring you a short-term feeling of improvement of some kind that might be hard to sustain. It's a sustained operating manual, frankly. I mean, I don't know. There's for your mind.
And your view is that there are few texts that do that.
I mean, can anyone name 10?
I think you'd be lucky to name 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'd put Marcus Aurelius's Meditations in that vein, maybe something along those lines, but very, very few have been written. Yeah.
So it's interesting because the person going down the aisle, and use that metaphorically or symbolically, doesn't know that.
Nope. I used to go down that aisle all the time.
Right. So what's happened is you have people who are questing. They're looking for something, and they don't know what to pick, so to speak.
So that's interesting. Back to something Sai said earlier. My introduction to Art of War was through learning first and not even understanding that I was being exposed to the Art of War, and then being handed the book. That was, and then reading it and just being like able to make the connection from the words in the book to the experiences I had. I feel quite fortunate that I got exposed that way, because I could have easily just put it back on the bookshelf like many other self-help books that I've read over the years, and not really understood the power that it has, and the impact that it can have.
So can you? Well, I my little squirrel wants to get drilled down. I get curious, but I don't want. I feel like I do this with each of you, so I want to be fair here. Let me pause. Cynthia, Steve, Sai, please respond. However you pick up on this, just any thoughts you have.
Cynthia and Steve, you want to say something, or and then I'll chime in after you, perhaps?
So for me, I think the art of war is my mirror to constantly look at my perspective and to constantly challenge my perspective to based on what is around me. So we're given that opportunity as soon as you walk out the house. Everywhere you go, you're given the opportunity to change your perspective. I think it was you, Steve, that says a kid knows, you know, if it's friend or foe, you know, just by being around somebody. I believe we all have that in us. It's just whether we tap into it or know how to tap into it, taking hold and being able to, you know, a kid. And I noticed this just as an example. If you're meeting someone's kid for the first time, your interaction with the parent is going to give that kid all the information that they need to know. And so if the kid sees you hugging the parent, you know, having a interaction with the parent that's loving, kind, or what have you, that kid is going to take hold and embrace that relationship, if you will, opposed to if you were standoffish and so forth. So I kind of look at it's in us. It's just we don't know how to tap into it and to use it, will it. I like the word will it to where it's a win-win for everybody involved. So it becomes a manual to help you interact and set up win-win opportunities you come in contact with. And that's what it is for me.
So Cynthia, just a question to follow up with that. So you're saying you use it as a little mirror and you use your will and you keep going over and it's a gradual process over time, correct? And then Chris says, I had an experience and then the book helped me integrate and make meaning out of what I was already going through, which is different. So the question it brings up for me, do people have different experiences and different ways of making it come alive in a relevant and useful way?
I would say
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
How else? Steve, Sai, how did it come for you? For example, how did you make meaning? We've got two out so far.
Yeah, I got a thought that I'm stuck on, and that is the why is this different? I want to speak to that a little bit. When I was a child, of course, right? Mother caught me in a lie, and we had a conversation about lying and how she, in fact, among other things, she told me, "You're not smart enough to lie." Like, why? Because if you tell the truth, you only have to remember the truth. If you tell a lie, now you have to remember the truth and the lie, and on and on and on it goes. So fast forward about 50 years, right? And the art of war. It's like who I am and my persona and why Art of War is different than a self-help book. These are fundamental truths, right? The sage commander operates this way and doesn't violate any of his principles and takes hold and interacts with all this stuff. And for every time I've enjoyed some success as a coach or a sage commander or a scrum master or anything else, and I've used this tool set, I can look back and it's almost as though we've connected these. For me, I've connected childhood experiences, young adult learnings, and things like that have been connected with this greater paradigm to operate in. So the reason why it's different is because these are fundamental truths. They're not some good idea. It's not a 7-step process. And you know, if I do these 5 things, bam, I'll have more money in the bank. If I do this, I get a new car. If I adopt these fundamental truths as a way of life, I'm on a continuous improvement journey for myself and everyone around me. You want to know why Art of War is different? That's it. This story never ends.
Man, that is so good, Steve.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
So, hi, help me out.
So, all good, all good. So a lot of key points. I think there's a few things that make the and if we go back to where kind of we took this path, the distinction of the person who walks down the aisle looking for something, for an easy solution in some cases, if you will. I think first off, the wisdom chooses you. The book chooses you. And of course, a book isn't going to make a choice, so it has to be someone else that introduces you to it. That's very, very key. So that very, very distinct from you choosing to read a book, but rather the wisdom finds you in so many ways, or the book finds you. The other aspect, which is extremely crucial, is you embrace the struggle. There are people that I'll just say myself that I've reached out to and try to make some degree of introduction. It falls to the wayside. Sometimes we chalk it up to they weren't ready or what have you, but they didn't really. It's not a question of they weren't ready. It's a question that of they didn't want to embrace the struggle because they knew it was a struggle. So it's definitively not a easy 1, 2, 3 step or 1 through 7 step, but the wisdom chooses you through another human being, and then definitively you choose to embrace the struggle and be evolve through that journey. And it is a continuous evolutionary journey. I'll tell you where my problem is, and I'm extremely aware of it. My problem is I get so much out of the struggle. It's magical. It's completely euphoric. And I mean, respectfully, you folks have worked with me and you've seen me where the more tired I am, the more I want, which is not necessarily a good thing.
Indeed.
What makes that a struggle for you, Silo?
Well, yeah.
So perhaps that's a better question to the three others who are here, because you've all experienced.
Well, you opened it up. You said I really struggle with this, and then you talk about the fact of how strong you are. So I'm curious, what makes that a struggle for you? So just to follow up,
the magic of being alive. That struggle puts life in your face in such a way that you can't ignore it. And that's where the euphoria comes in. That's when the awe comes in. There's no way to avoid it. Where most of us, we go back to the unnaturalness or the inauthenticity. We come up with stories in our heads to avoid the reality so that we don't deal with it. And then what that does is it depletes our life. And then our life force, quite honestly. We've all met people in organizations, right, that have been there forever and have submitted their will to what will be, versus truly contributing what's possible from all the wisdom that is given to them by being in existence. So I'm selfish. I admit that. And you've heard me say it many times. I'm extremely selfish.
Well, you could be, I don't know, borderline addicted to seeing.
There's no borderline. It's addictive.
To seeing the magic happen.
Well
right?
put, Chris.
Yeah. And that's to your credit, Sai. But also, we want you around, so you can't. You got to get some sleep, man.
I appreciate it.
Well done, Chris.
Is it possible to interchange the word struggle with work? To do the work, like in doing the work? Because I found that once I was made aware of my dysfunction, it was doing the work to change my normal. Doing the work to show up differently. Doing the work it's a choice of doing the work every day. Yeah. And to Steve's point, it's never ending.
Cynthia, that I think brilliant, right? I like work better than struggle in some ways. The difference to me, right? If it is pure struggle or pure conflict or pure work without reward, that is, it's sad what that does to people, right? If we think about struggle, work, and add the component of resolving that and coming up with continuous solutions, well, now we've got, that's what, if I could be so bold, Sai, and tell me if I'm wrong, but that's where the addiction comes in, right? It's not I don't embrace chaos because I love the disorientation. I embrace chaos because I love the feeling of success when we move closer towards order. And then we pick that up again and again and again. And then all of a sudden it's like, I can't wait to go to work. I can't wait to have impact on people, because even though, this person hates that one, and this thing can never get fixed, and this technology is not good enough, and we don't have enough money for that. All of that, as we apply our tool set and get successes, that is the elixir that keeps me alive.
Wow.
That's the addiction.
That's very powerful.
So consider words as a filter as well, exactly as we're talking here. And what's interesting is you can often say, we can say to someone, hey, this is going to require work. That's a particular filter as to who will step into that work versus who doesn't. There's another filter when you say, something, we're going to struggle through this together. That's a different filter.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I am very intentional using the word struggle because I want to know very early on, as best as I can from an indicator, whether the person really wants it enough.
Yeah.
And I know, respectfully, Cynthia, when you and I first met, right? Oh boy, I could tell you were prepared for the journey. And when Krista, you and I met, right? Enough respectfully teasing the situation a little bit. Yeah, this man's going to do magic. There's no doubt there. And by all means, Steve, when you and I first met, in literally the first 60 seconds, you got confirmation. I immediately felt confirmation as to, okay, this is going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So the filters are interesting relative to these words.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sai. I think sometimes the word work, it has such a you have a personal relationship to work and the word work and what that means. And it's usually not positive for more and more folks, where struggle implies that there's something good along the path or along the journey or on the other side, right? Work could just be going in mindlessly to a place every day. That could be work, right? It could be, changing a flat tire. That's just some work I have to do, right? But thinking about, well, it's not just changing a flat tire. I'm now going to have some great learning about how to change a flat tire, and I'll be better at it the next time I have to do that. That's different. That's a struggle, right? To use a very simple example.
So the internal and the external
manifestation
of the word, right? Yeah. Whether that is work or struggle or success or conflict, to me, again, if I'd be so bold, that's why you can't just pick up Art of War and read the words and be a changed person, because the words have meanings associated with your interpretation and action and persona and impact on those around you, right? The sage commander can do things without lifting a finger, right? The presence is enough, which speaks volumes to why you can't just pick up the doggone book and read it and now I am a changed person. Ain't gonna work, right? It is, you have to go through the struggle to get the prize.
Yeah.
I like how I use the word struggle with talking with someone else or getting a touch on whether or not they're in it or not. After they're in it then becomes work. So, and that's ownership. I'm looking at it work from an ownership perspective. So I'm always pointed back at myself where it's work. I don't know how to sum it up. It's work because you really are not letting yourself off the hook, with the unintelligent thinking that you might bring to a situation.
So this may, I'm wondering if this sets us up for Thursday's call. And I want to ask us to think a little bit about, because I'm aware of our time.
Yeah. Whit, can I add one thing real quickly, if you don't mind? Just ever so quickly. My apologies. So quickly.
Yeah.
I love what Cynthia mentioned. Struggle and work are two sides of the same coin. In our relationship, right? Cynthia, are you willing to struggle? Are you really prepared to struggle? That's a question from my vantage point. From your vantage point, yes, I am willing to struggle, and it's going to require me to do work. So two faces of the same coin. It's very powerful. So I want to
Really
make
good.
sure. Yeah, I'm going
That's
to
a
make sure.
great.
Really
I
good.
love that.
Forgive me for interrupting you, Whit.
Oh no, you shouldn't be forgiving. You say that's right on. I love it.
Too kind.
That's very good. I'm glad you did that. Look, here's the question: is as a wrap up, what question or challenge lingers for you personally? Like, we're all on this journey of growing. So wherever our edge is on this in terms of integrating, but what's a question that lingers with you, or a challenge that maybe we could consider picking up on on Thursday to continue this conversation?
I won't be there Thursday, but one of the things I struggle with is literally using the word struggle, or just ponder, is as more people get exposed to the art of war, I worry that it gets misunderstood or misused. So how do we ensure that the learnings receive the amount of respect that they really deserve, and they're treated as privileged learnings, as opposed to generic learnings? That's one of the things that I worry about. Yeah.
And honestly, that's why when we came up with, and I say we, really, when I came up with the Art of War in the Wild, it's precisely that point. Is because I saw the integrity in the marketplace begin to degrade. It fluctuates, but I saw such an increase with such potent voices. I thought, wait a minute, you gotta have people like yourselves talk to this.
Interesting. So Sai, what about for you? Picking up on that, just in terms of where your edge is, what you're thinking, what you want to work on.
I think exactly as I echo Chris's comments, quite honestly, in many ways, so that it isn't diluted like so many things. And it's just one thing after another that gets diluted. This has lasted so long because it has been treated with the respect it deserves.
Okay.
I would love to see it in like your Leadership 101 platforms, because I see there's a large amount of leaders being promoted and not properly equipped with the tools to navigate conflict in a healthy way. And so just from a corporate perspective, even from a non-corporate, just in life in general, there is, at the leadership level, there needs to be that level of understanding and being able to take hold so that you could bring more to the table in a win-win environment, opposed to that aggression, because it only takes one person to bring aggression, and then that could influence everything else around it. And so I would just like to see it more in your leadership space to help today's leaders.
Yeah. Steve?
Worked with another consultant that I was coaching, and the light bulb came on, and she said to me one day, you can read a book about swimming, and you can do all kinds of things to understand the mechanics and the arms and the legs and everything else. And the truth of it is, if I pick you up and throw you in a pool with all your clothes on, that's a completely different experience. So to me, the challenge, right? It's what is the legacy of this? How do we take this book that's been around for a couple thousand years and give it its due? And it's not it's not read the book and now I understand swimming. It is help people understand that it's more than a bunch of words or a checklist of things, and B, that experience and how it changes you helps you change it. And by the it, I mean everything around you changes, and there's no shortcut.
That's great. Good. Well, folks, I think our time's up. I want to thank you all for being here. Any final comments? We all set? Then we will. Go ahead, Cynthia.
That kind of like sums up the art of war for me.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. For me, I have a whole new perspective for my world, like what I see. And that's all because I am changing the way I'm saying it.
Cynthia, I think that's profound, but can you say it again? Because I think you broke up a little bit, and I want to make sure the folks heard it. Yeah.
Wayne Dyer, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
Very
Really
good.
good. Really good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. See you.